Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the IT Hour. We are so glad you have joined us on this Friday morning. We have a great show for you today. How's everyone doing today?
Doing well.
Pretty fantastic. It's a solid Friday here in the district, long weekend. So, we are getting ready for, a weekend of barbecuing and going to the pool for the last time, kind of closing the book on summer a little bit. Looks like the weather's going to treat us right. So, I think it's going to be a pretty grand time. And of course, we're all getting ready for DataCon here in DC. It descends on the convention center next weekend. Here in DC, it's a great place to come for conventions because, there's always the district that you went to when you were in your 8th grade field trip, right? And you got to see Lincoln Memorial and the Capitol and the White House and, all of those things. Those things are, in fact, here. And if they are an attraction for you, you should come and visit them. But there's so much more to this city. There's a lot of really great stuff. You can go for a bike ride in Rock Creek Park, go for a walk in Rock Creek Park, take a horse to Rock Creek Park. Those are all options that you have. Here it's an incredible national park that's right down the center of the city, which is just awesome. Go to the Drum Circle on Saturday at Malcolm X Park, which is also called Meridian Hill Park. Or go and spend the day, ride the Anacostia Trail. Go to a Nats game, do all sorts of fun stuff. So, we're excited to welcome folks to DC. It's my hometown, so I'm real partial to it. For the better part of 10 years, I ran a website called welovedc.com. So yeah, I was going to say this is a place I love to show off. And so, I get to do that. I posted something in the community, a guide that, for your phone, so that if you're coming, you can go and eat and drink at all the great places in DC. So it's all there for you.
Yeah, thanks for stealing part of my community update, Tom. It's all right. I used to be that way about San Diego when I lived there. I loved showing it off to people. That's always the fun of, featuring your hometown. So very cool. So today, we have the usual suspects. We've got community meetup. Ella is here to talk about JumpCloud University. And then Tom will talk a little bit about products. And then we'll jump into the main show, which we will talk about in just a couple minutes. So first off, on community, yes, Tom has put in a guide to DC for DataCon attendees. Make sure you go check that out because he's got a really cool video and he made a map. An Apple map to guide people around. So go check that out. Callie, one of our product marketing managers, has a quick question about password manager versus password vault. And they would like your opinion on that. So go check it out. And last week we mentioned password complexity, and there's actually a post on that going over it in a little more detail. So if you wanted more on that, you can go check it out as well. And our good buddy and friend of the show, Steven, wrote up that post that he's been promising for a while on what they did to onboard their first IT employee. So go give him some love on that one. It's a nice, long, and awesome post. So thank you, Steven, for writing that, and go check it out. I will drop some of these links in the chat while Alexa gives the Meetup update.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to be back after I missed 2 episodes of the IT Hour. So happy to be here. And yeah, Meetup. So this week we had an in-person meetup for our Chicago group. It was the second in-person meetup for that group, which is super exciting. So just a couple shout outs to give. Number one, shout out Pam, JumpCloud Pam, for hosting that one and helping me coordinate all that. But also shout out to Steve from the 1871 for loaning us his venue to have the actual meetup. And then finally, I'd like to shout out Rob, who, is a loyal IT Hour listener, but he drove almost 6 hours round trip to attend the in-person Chicago meetup. So shout out to Rob. That is some dedication. And I hope you had a good time. I did hear it was worth it because you snagged an office chair. So you never know what's going to happen at a meetup. But also, I just want to plug a couple upcoming meetups. So for our Singapore group, I think I mentioned the last time I was on here that we set up the Singapore group officially, which is awesome. It's taking off. We have almost 60 members, which is amazing. And we have the first in-person meetup for them, their kickoff meetup next week on the 8th at Super Loco, the Robertson Quay location. So make sure that you are registered if you're joining us from Singapore. We have a lot of the JumpCloud team who's going to be in Singapore during that time. So it's going to be a great time, a lot of networking. We have a ton of registrations already. So looking forward to seeing how that is going to turn out. And then also upcoming, we have the DC meetup, our first in-person meetup for the DC group. Tom is hosting, and if you couldn't tell, he loves DC. So make sure you go. That is going to be at City Tap on August 13th. Yeah, and in conjunction with DataCon. So even if you're just visiting DC for the event, you're welcome to join. Open to all, as always. So yeah, a lot of exciting things coming up. And as always, I will drop the link to our network in the chat. So make sure you're a member, because that is where we launch all the events and post all of our updates. So yeah, make sure you join.
Thank you. Ella, would you like to talk about what is new at the JCU?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. My name is Ella Regolo. Those of you that don't know me, I'm the senior manager for the customer education team here at JumpCloud. So JumpCloud University, the courses that you might take or any of the tutorials that you might watch in there, that's what my team is kind of working on and has been working on. And we've been super busy the last month, and we'll be continuing to be super busy the rest of this quarter. And excited to share with you a couple different things. So if you haven't already made an account for JumpCloud University, you can log in and have an account here on JCU. You can see that I'm already logged in, but it would prompt you to kind of log in and create a quick little profile there. One of the great things about JumpCloud University is that our courses are now searchable. So one of the new course curriculum that we've just come out with this last month is on PowerShell. So does anybody ever have issues with PowerShell, trouble with that? Maybe you have IT admins that you're working with. So one of the really new things that we're doing is we're actually leveling our courses as we release the new content. So there's 3 new courses around PowerShell that are really exciting here. Intro to PowerShell. So you've got a new IT admin, you just kind of need starting to use PowerShell, want an introduction on what that is, take a look at that. Then leveraging the JumpCloud PowerShell module. So you're kind of, maybe you've got a good understanding, you need a little bit more in-depth actions with how to do it, efficiencies, things like that. Take a look at that leveraging. And then maybe you're more advanced. You've been using it. Maybe you've had a couple issues in the past and you want to see kind of how to maybe fix that, some actions that might take, repetitive tasks you might need to do. Take a look at that advanced PowerShell course. All again, if you are searchable on JCU, if you want to come up here at the top and search for those. So really excited to bring you that new curriculum, especially the leveled out. You'll see a lot more of our kind of leveling curriculum in our courses in JumpCloud University, so that we're meeting the needs of all the IT admins that might be using JumpCloud. The other kind of coming up, we just wanted to let you know that some of you might be channel partners. Are there any channel partners, MSPs, VARs, distributors in the mix here in the audience? If we have any, we do actually now have partner-specific learning paths in JumpCloud. So it's not open to anybody. So kind of talk to your account manager if you don't already have this link or don't see that partner learning paths there and you are part of that partner program, and we'll make sure we get that to you. Once you get on that link, you're going to be able to see some really cool, new, exciting learning paths that we have. One specifically around sales. So like selling JumpCloud, how do you position it? How do you talk to your clients about it? Really great kind of new sales certification. You can get a little badge at the end of that, put that in your email signature. And then a technical consultant one. This has our core certification content, but do you ever need to demo? Do you need to show your clients and be able to jump in and demo and really have that solid understanding with how to help them implement JumpCloud? Take a look at that technical consultant one. Also get your own little badge there to be able to put on there that are specific to any of our channel partners. So excited to offer that to you. Please reach out to your account manager if you don't have access to those and you're interested. So super excited there to offer that. And we have a lot of things coming. So those are new. Everything is out there. Next, when I come back to this, I will be talking to you a little bit more about what's to come. Right now, we're in the process of updating some of our courses, adding admin settings course. We're updating the adding devices course. Super excited to offer you a second new updated adding Apple devices using MDM specifically. So really excited to have that out and released for you within this next month. So when I come back, we'll be highlighting that and sharing some of the features of that course. So thanks, everybody. If you ever have any questions about JCU or want to see more content in there or courses, please don't hesitate to email us at university@JumpCloud, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that or support you with that. So thank you all so much. Happy to do that little Ed Spotlight today for everybody.
Thank you, Ella. That's great. Very exciting about the 3 different PowerShell courses and the different leveling. I love it. Can't wait to jump in. And I'm hearing great things about how powerful the JumpCloud PowerShell module is. I'm hearing rumors that maybe even better than the native Microsoft PowerShell. That's what I'm hearing. So can't wait
that's
to
one thing I
check
was
it
going
out.
to talk about. I was going to say that's one thing I was going to talk about in our product update
Nice.
today is that the JumpCloud PowerShell module has received a major overhaul. If you're using PowerShell 7, and you should be because it's super nice, there is now the ability to do parallelization tasks in there. And so Joe Workman and our whole team over at the, on the JumpCloud Solutions Architecture team, those guys are the ones who are managing the, the development of our PowerShell module. If you've used our PowerShell module, you know that, well, doing some tasks in serialization can be really slow, long loops. If you're going through those processes, there's a lot of delay time between PowerShell sending the command to JumpCloud responding back with a different value, doing all of those kind of things. Well, Joe and his team have spent a lot of time working on, serializing that, offering serialization as part of that process. This is stuff that even, Microsoft's Microsoft AD module for PowerShell doesn't even support yet. But with JumpCloud's new version of the PowerShell module, and again, this doesn't just work for Windows users. This works for Mac users too. You as a Mac admin, you can install PowerShell on your Mac, and you should. It's awesome. It's actually a really solid scripting language. And so you can use that with the JumpCloud APIs that are built into the JumpCloud, PowerShell module, and it's so much faster. If you've got a lot of systems and you need to loop through all of those things, you can expect, for very large loops, you're looking at somewhere between like a 40 to 50% speed increase to go through your environment. And I'm going to get them to post up on the community a little bit later today with some of the graphs that but looking at what they look like for some of the larger cases, we were seeing massive increases in speed, decreases in time, just to get you out to where you need to go. So there's a lot to love about the new PowerShell module. Super exciting, and give that a try today. There's also, of course, the long-awaited early access period for remote access is here. You can do this directly out of the admin console and start a remote control session with one of your JumpCloud devices. If you want in on the early access, you've got to talk to your account manager, though. So talk with your account folks and get on that list, and know that we're hoping to open up the password manager over the next couple of weeks as well. So that if you're looking at either of these things, talk to your account manager. They're the ones that can actually get you through and put on the early access list. We need some information out of your tenant to do that, and they're coordinating that process. But I've been working with Niraj, who's one of the PMs on the RAS product, and it passes my muster. I'm super excited for this. I'm super excited to get this into your hands. There's a lot of really great stuff here to kind of make your job it just needs to be just a little bit easier, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing about IT. It's constant. It's everywhere. It's everything everywhere all at once, right? Like if we look at what IT is, that's kind of our job. It's soup to nuts kind of responsibility. And so to have one thing that's just a little bit easier with JumpCloud, we're super excited to put that out there. And then last but not least, there's going to be a really nice little improvement to the commands functionality. If you look in your commands functionality, JumpCloud has been long managed a repository of JumpCloud supplied commands. These are commands written by our solutions architecture team, Joe, Jeff, all of the folks over on that side, Andy, and each of them get the opportunity to commit commands to that repo. And now you can create them directly inside the JumpCloud user experience. You don't need to go to GitHub, get an API command, run that in PowerShell. You can add a command directly from the templates, directly in the commands feature. You can just go click on a new command, and instead of writing your own, you can grab one from the template right there. So that's super exciting. This feature is also coming to our multi-tenant portal in the not distant future. And when you can do that, you can maintain one set of command repos and push that out to all of your tenants. So there's a lot of really great stuff that we're having there. I'll bring Suba on to the IT hour in a month or so when that is starting to be ready. So I'm excited for that. But that kind of takes you through the product update this week. Thanks so much, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Lots of exciting stuff. Later on this month, we are going to have the team for Password Manager coming on to talk about it. I think 2 or 3 Fridays from now. So put that on your calendar. We're very excited about that. And then early in October, we will have Remote Assist on here to give a demo as well. So we've got lots of cool stuff coming up. Very excited to have that. Ella.
And Becky, I was just going to one quick thing before I jumped off and you introduced the speaker for today. Just there's questions about content for these, and we are at Customer Education. Look, once we get to GA, look for that content automatically on JCU, whether it is a tutorial or whether it's a course. We are very involved in all of these releases and excited to bring content to you. So that will be happening, and we might have some small demos and things like that as they come out, but there will be content on JCU once GA happens with these releases. So excited to provide that for you guys as well.
Yeah, and look for posts on the community from Ella's team once those are ready. Yep. They will make sure to announce that.
Feel free to engage with Cheyenne Brooks or myself on the community ever. We're both in there, and she posts a lot about any of our releases. So, okay. All right, I'm going to hop off, Becky, before you guys jump into the next. But thanks, everybody. Nice to see you all. Happy Friday. Enjoy the long weekend. And I look forward to bringing you updates the next time.
Yeah, thanks, Ella. And Brian has a question about, does the forum also work as an office hours with issues? If you want to post in the community forums, if you have issues, you want to ask questions, it definitely serves as a peer-to-peer place to ask questions and try to problem solve. You are more than welcome to do so. Some of our team will hop in as they can, but definitely peer-to-peer, people will try to jump in and help you as they can. And with that, Chase, if you want to come on camera, we have our super duper awesome principal strategist, Chase, on with us. And we are going to talk today about small biz security and how it doesn't have to be either security or business priorities. You don't have to choose. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. And Tom and Chase are going to talk a little bit more about how you can do that. We had a recent white paper talking about, I think the fun title was Choose Your Own Adventure. But we're going to talk a little bit about how you can actually do both. It doesn't have to be, throw one out and only go with just one thing. I know it can be hard sometimes trying to figure out how you're going to do your budget. You got limited resources, limited budget, all these things. And you feel like, I've got to make a choice. But we're going to talk about how you don't have to. They can play nicely together. Isn't that right?
It is. Well, and thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to join. Obviously, I was very excited, so I had to match Tom and come on and so that way we can tackle this topic together, because
it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Chase showed up in his shirt.
Yes. And I was looking all casual, like it was Friday, and I was like, "Oh man, Chase needs to. I need to match my man here." So that is. I know.
Now I'm the only casual one with the Marvel shirt, and I guess I should have changed.
We'll talk about She-Hulk later, okay?
I love the shirt sympathy already. I feel this is great. This is great coming into it. But yeah, we published a white paper in coordination with our partner CrowdStrike, and really what we're looking at is, taking a step back, look at all the things that are available to small, medium enterprises, and particularly thinking about business and security both of which are very fun, right? But typically when you're coming into this mode, especially from multiple different perspectives. And so the goal for this, and I'm not going to read through the entire white paper, right? So I'm just going to hopefully suss out some of the little tidbits so that way you can scan like, okay, yeah, I got it. But there's the element of this is really what we're thinking about is most people kind of come as like I mentioned, like a dichotomy, right? Be kind of business and or security, right? I want to be either revenue generating or I want to build a castle and protect all the things. However, that type of mentality is now pretty much kind of dissolving, right? And I think a lot of folks, especially seeing here, and we'll cover some IT news here in a bit, but you see that there's a lot of security related stuff that's happening out there in the world, whether it's small businesses, whether it's national actors, whether everything else in between. And the good news is small businesses are very quick. They can implement new things, right? There's some budget constraints, surely, as they think about growing their business. However, because there's so many of them, and because a lot of it is a little bit more dispersed, they become ripe for attacks. And there's many different ways that they can come into it, right? I think most of us are aware of, phishing and ransoms and all of the things that will kind of come into that fold. But really the kind of the goal of this was to kind of step back a little bit and say, okay, let's look at the perspective of this, because most people don't think that they're security people unless you're a security person, right? They kind of have this mentality of like, no, I'm a business owner. I'm going to go out and kind of build revenue, or I'm part of the IT. I need to think about the infrastructure, which blends in a lot more security practices by default. But there's also this kind of mission within an organization that, everyone needs to be putting on their security hat. And it goes all the way to the top as well, because when you think about it, everyone in the C-suite is usually targeted the most around that, because people understand that that's where the true power in their identity lives within. And so a lot of attacks are coming in from, and say, over 80% of the attacks that we've seen kind of working with CrowdStrike throughout this paper was identity based. And that's where most people are trying to get into, right? And so this mentality of kind of a four-walled garden isn't really there anymore. And so when you think about what the perimeter is for security, and most organizations as they're thinking about it, it comes back down to the identity. And so making sure that you have this awareness of what's possible within that, and making sure that you're not overspreading yourself, right? So when you're thinking about how you can bring on either new tooling, new features, new platforms, kind of other pieces into your practice, it's helping both the security side, which is great, and the business side. And I think a lot of folks don't think that security enables business. And because the flip of that too is when I'd say another rising thing that you see a lot within organizations and many of our customers is kind of, hey, I want to be SOC 2 Type 2. I want to go through ISO. I want to show that there is some level of credibility within my organization for you to do business with me. And so that's actually where security can be an enabler to generate revenue for folks, right? And so, and some people might think of it like, oh, it's kind of going through checking boxes, right? Okay, we got MFA on the things, we got devices secured, we're going to patch those as well. And you kind of run through that. But each one of those, you're adding in multiple different layers into how you think about this overall security mentality within your business. And it's really important because there's a delta, for most small businesses, because one, they have smaller resources. And I think it's also very tactical too. When you think about people that are looking at, okay, I'm going to monitor network traffic, I'm thinking about all those things. Most people know that it's probably more of a 9-to-5 role for a lot of businesses, right? So kind of accounting, law office, dry cleaners, whatever that might be, when they're on, they're on. But as we come into Labor Day weekend, right, as many of you might have remembered, right, there was also a fairly large supply chain attack that happened over a holiday weekend. And so people understand that this mentality for a lot of businesses kind of let off the gas. Whereas in large organizations, you kind of might have a managed SOC team or kind of other pieces where it's a little bit more 24/7. And so that's one element that makes small businesses a little bit more ripe for attack. And then the other piece is, there's not a whole lot of backup. When you think most organizations, they probably have maybe a couple months of revenue, 6-9 months. Hopefully it's a longer runway, maybe if you have some funding. But if you have a TAC that's costing you $500,000, then that's cash right now, right? And so the business itself might be worth more, but you don't have cash right now. And so that's another piece where people are more ripe to have those attacks, because it's like, hey, I know that they're going to pay because I am going to put them out of business otherwise. And that's actually one of the things that we found, right? And so if you're getting attacked, the element of solvency is at 20%, which is relatively high, right? And so someone clicked on an email and there goes your business. And so that's just to show you, obviously on the very extreme example, right? But that's what can happen when you're not thinking about this from a security first type of perspective, and especially coming in with that. So there's a couple different pieces that we talk through around the white paper in terms of, okay, now what, right? And so thank you, Grace, for random stats, and we'll keep dropping this, and everyone knows that it's scary world outside, but it's Friday. So how can we kind of get through all of these different pieces to make it a little bit more real? And so what we kind of outline is kind of just 4 mental steps. And I know most of us are thinking through this, or kind of, especially to kind of thinking about budget cycles or other elements, is 1, start. Again, let's take a step back. And I think I've said that a few times. So now we're probably 5 steps back at this point. But most security for organizations kind of comes at layers, right? And say, okay, well, now we need to think about what are all the different pieces that I need to have within this. And so we start with kind of phase 1, which is identify. And so these are all the different core components that you have within your organization. So it's like, hey, identity management, that's a good piece. Device management, that's another good piece. How about single sign-on? How about multi-factor authentication? How about, oh, we got to keep those devices up to date now. Okay, great. And then maybe network access. Now we need to kind of have those elements of monitoring. And so you've identified essentially all the core pieces that you need to have an operating and secure business. Now, great, we've gone through, we've got budget, hopefully to kind of have those elements, and now we're going to start to incorporate them into our business. And sometimes this is a big bang where you say, hey, we're going to be starting out and we have all these pieces, but more often than not, it's, hey, we now need to have this level, or there might be a compelling event, like we mentioned, kind of auditing our compliance or other elements that bring that into the fold. And so now you're starting to incorporate that a little bit more into your stack. Okay, now we have all the things, right? We show up, we have all the toys to making sure our business is secure, but now we need to get them to talk to each other. And so kind of moving into that 3rd phase of now we're going to start to integrate all of those different technologies. So that way, 1, it's a little bit faster. 2, hopefully everything's starting to talk to each other as well. And 3rd, there's kind of that hidden piece of visibility, because now what you want to start to do is, okay, now I can see if something's happening over here and there's alert or some sort of trigger, let's making sure it's not, a forest for the trees. Let's make sure everything within the network is starting to understand that we can tie all these pieces together. And then kind of the 4th phase is, now we have a well-running operation. You start to think of it, we have everything within our fingertips, but now, well, let's kind of bring back in the cost a little bit, right? So let's start to think about how can we make security kind of work for us? And so in this final phase of kind of the 4 steps of this process is to consolidate a lot of different things, right? Because I think each one of us are kind of going through different toolings and features, but like, that kind of looks like something over here, or kind of, does this do the same thing? Or kind of like, do I really need to pay so much per user for those types of pieces? And so that's kind of how you can first at least get a better sense of a good baseline, grow, making sure that it's well integrated and talking to all the different pieces. And then finally consolidating that into truly a core security stack that will help that. And so that's one piece of advice, right? Kind of coming from this white paper, as you think about all the different elements, thinking about security within your organization, to kind of come back and making sure that it's really real. And so those are, I'd say, the key highlights that I wanted to get across from the white paper. But then obviously, I think a lot of that really starts to become more real in use case examples and other pieces when you think about that. So I'll take a quick pause, see if there's any other comments. Otherwise, there's a couple other tidbits too from the paper that I want to start to work in.
So that's fantastic. I think that, as we start to think about, I think that a lot of organizations think of, we go back to the Steve Jobs comment, design is not how it looks, design is how it works. And so, those kind of sage advice for businesses is that, business is only as good as how it operates, and only as useful as its functionality. And so security kind of has to be baked into those kind of things in order for the business to have a longevity that is substantial in the current marketplace that we're in.
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks, from the, I'd say, kind of business owner operator type of mentality, a lot of people kind of think of it almost as a tax, right? And so it's like, great, I want to make sure it's up to date. I want to make sure that I have professionals kind of looking after it. But other than that, I want to just know that it's happening, right? It's kind of over here in this box. Whereas not many people come in to be like, I'm going to run a business like an accountant. Great. But you do want to approach kind of owning, operating a business as in a security professional, right? Thinking about what are the highest risks that are available within the market landscape. Sure, there's competition, there's customers that, either love to talk to you or don't love to talk to you. But there's all these other pieces that are on the fringes that hopefully one is just kind of more of an awareness piece. So I think, most everyone here is kind of beating that horse to death a little bit more so. But then it's also the message out, making sure that the whole organization is tied and say, okay, great, we're going to do security. Now, what does that mean? How are we going to be thinking about that? Should we be looking at? And so this is why, kind of end user training is becoming much more popular. You have a lot of businesses that are having that, kind of now being more, which is good, mandated onboarding, right? All the way up to the executive level, because again, who you are within the organization, you will be targeted a little bit differently, right? But they're becoming more and more sophisticated, especially for those, if you're coming into the career for the first time, it might be a little bit more, you might not have seen as many attacks kind of go through, but you also have a lot less value tied to your identity. As you progress though, right? And you kind of throughout your career, then you become much more of a high value target, because then that identity within the organization allows people to influence, allows other things to open up and unlock and other elements to think about what's happening as it starts to evolve.
Yeah. I was going to say we see it all the time with things like different kind of targeted attacks based on a company's controller or their CFO, as opposed to somebody who is fairly junior, or different kinds of attacks for assistants as opposed to directors. And so having some kind of sophistication in terms of your internal training makes a lot of sense, in terms of like, you got to make people ready for the kind of attacks that they're going to be exposed to, not the ones that, aren't going to work on them. Like, hey, so-and-so, I know you're busy. I'm busy right now. Can you go buy me some gift cards? Why on earth would I do that? I'm, somebody senior. That only works on somebody who's maybe a little bit, more junior, a little bit more in awe, a little bit more threatened by the fact that some C-suite officer is trying to get them to do a task. So, I was gonna say, you've got to look at the psychology of your training as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've also got to remind people and, pound it into their heads over and over again that security is not set it and forget it. It is
Correct.
Constant vigilance. It is not just something that you can just go, oh, it's not my job. No, it has to be everybody's job in this day and age. No matter what your position is in the company. If you think it's not your job, that's actually when you're most vulnerable, because that's when people get caught. They click on a link and they're not paying attention. They go like, oh, well, somebody sent me a document. I'm going to click on it. And then you go, oh crap, that wasn't what I was supposed to click on. Or, you're in a hurry and you click on something as you're running out the door or just whatever. And that's when you get hit, that's exactly when it happens, because they're expecting you to be in a hurry. They're expecting you to not pay attention, or it looks just legitimate enough. So that's actually when you have to be the most careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's that piece too of I'll kind of transition a little bit, where there's kind of an element of, first we need to protect all the things, right? So it's like, okay, great, I got antivirus, I'm going to put up a firewall, I'm going to do kind of all these things to just keep everyone out. That's one element. And that's a little bit harder because, bad guys only need to be right once, right? They can send off 1,000 attacks that, however many emails for gift cards, great, well, we might get one. And even then, that's essentially when you start to become less of a target by choice, and then a little bit more of a target by chance, right? Because then you can spread out a wide net, and then someone's like, oh, snap, right? It's like, I got one intro into there. But the power kind of shifts over a little bit more into your side, right? And so that's just on the front walls. But then as soon as someone's in, well, it takes time, right? So when you're reading through a lot of the diagnostics for some of these larger attacks, it's like, hey, they were in there for a month, right? It took them that long to kind of figure out, okay, here's how I can traverse over here. Here's kind of who works within the organization, kind of all these other pieces. And that's actually the power that you have, is like, they only need to be right once to get in, but you can be right to kick them out throughout that whole time. And so a lot of folks typically think about security from the protect side, Whereas you need spending a little bit more focus on kind of the detection side, right? So if someone's in, what are the kind of internal alerts? What are the things that can source out to you so that way you can understand, you can take action from this? And so I was listening to another speaker not too long ago where he was kind of going through this scenario where it was a smaller insurance company and they had ransomware, and they had, I think they ended up paying kind of close to $1 million total for all the things, right? Downtime, paying off the ransomware itself, all of these different elements, and kind of going through that. And I said, hey, they were actually in there for exactly, it was like 6 weeks and I had no idea. And so that's one of the pieces too, where a lot more folks should be sending on the detection side, right? So if they're in, they only need to make one wrong move in order to throw off that flag, and you can kick them out. And so it's also keeping in mind, right, that you have a lot more power than you realize, but you're kind of putting it into those different pieces. Another way that I'll kind of put this for most folks is when you think about home security, right? So it's not like you're going around putting bars across all your windows to say, no matter what, you're not going to get in. For most of us, it's kind of like a Simply Safe or something else where it's like, if they're going to get in, they're going to get in, right? So if someone really wants to get into my house, it's going to happen. But I put in the detection and the monitoring around that. So that way, one, I know what's happening. And then two, I can take action right away. And that's actually where a lot of folks kind of need to spend a little bit more time and investment, because that's actually where you can get the most value out of preventing a lot of these high risk, types of incidents and events.
Yeah, it's not just the prevention, but you can't always prevent everything. So detection, right? It's knowing when something happens so you can try and get to it right away or as quickly as possible so you can limit the damage. Like you have something that's going to monitor when a door opens or when a window breaks so that you know it right away so you can minimize the damage or the exposure or whatever's going on. So, that piece of it's important too.
Exactly. It's just bringing that same type of mentality, but into kind of workforce, into your day-to-day, and not so much, right? Because like we understand that. We have that from a home mentality, but kind of how to bring that into our professional lives that's one of the key pieces. And again, kind of being able to sort out that visibility, making sure that all the tools within your stack are talking to each other, that if something has an alert over here, you can see it and there's that visualization. And that's kind of making sure that all of those pieces are wired together, working for you. And that's, kind of to bring this around a little bit more full circle, that's how you can make sure that actually the security arm is actually helping to support and prop up the business side. One, not only making sure that you're avoiding a ton of risk, but then also putting your best foot forward in terms of other clients saying, here's how we run as an organization. Because a lot of folks, especially now, you might not be interacting with people live, right? You might have a lot more conversations like these where we're all going to hang out in a nice bunch of square boxes. And so it's those other elements where you're able to bring in elements of trust, right? And say, here's how I run security. Here's kind of how the team is built. Use that, right? Making sure that is actually part of it. Whatever value features, all these other things. So like even within JumpCloud, right? We're talking about remote assist and kind of all these things that I'm very excited to get out and play with. But underneath all that, we have majority of our conversations, right, is how's JumpCloud secure? How are we put together? How can we instill the trust within our customers and our organizations, right? And so that actually helps us grow as a business as well. And so making sure that you are leaning on those levers as well.
Yeah. And, Kelly brought up a really interesting point in the chat. She says that when she gives security presentations to clients, I always tell I'd rather have more emails forwarded me so I can reply, yeah, it's fake, delete with impunity than, but see the one time when it's an actual thing that could be trouble. And that kind of that's a really important message because it's all about trust. You are asking your end users to trust you, and you're putting them in a vulnerable position because they may not recognize every kind of attack that's out there in terms of like, yep, that one's good, that one's bad, this one's good, this one's bad. And they might, due to, shall we say, the psychological damage caused by previous IT departments or a different kind of IT mentality in another organization, that's a really vulnerable moment for somebody. Because it's admitting that you don't know something, but that you want to know the answer. And you could be afraid that you might look stupid in the moment. And really what you need to, encourage them is, hey, I've spent a long career looking at all of this stuff. I will tell you one way or the other, and I would much rather tell you a bunch of, yeah, that's fake, than miss one when, I might save the company, especially with that 20% solvency rate that Chase was talking about there. That's a huge stat. And it also really, it really gives you something to think about as an IT professional. What aren't your coworkers telling you? What aren't they, running by you? Because maybe you have because that's shadow IT right there. And that's, hey, I used to work with an organization where IT was really good at saying no. And so the default became no. And if what you needed to do your job was put something on your, personal credit card and expense it back to the company as marketing supplies, but really it's Dropbox, that was a thing that we would run into frequently. And because IT would say no. And so now there's shadow IT. And so if you run the risk, if you have a reputation for saying no all the time, that people won't even ask you the question, when that's something that they should be weaving into their security plan, when that's something that they should be connecting to JumpCloud, that's something that they should be going through and do all of those things. And if you don't have the trust of your colleagues, are you really capable of securing your organization? The answer is maybe no. And boy, that's scary. The first time I figured that out, it was a real eye-opening moment. I kind of had to go sit down for a little bit because I was like, oh no, what have I caused? What damage have I caused because I wasn't open, or because I was judgy, or because, or because I was, frustrated in a moment of exhaustion, as opposed to trying to deal with this as a more human factor and to try to make your coworkers smart, because none of us is as smart as all of us.
Yeah.
And so what kind of things can you learn and bring to the table? And what kind of things can your coworkers teach you? Because there's a ton of things. There were a couple of things in security that, we were working with a company that did utility work, and was sitting down with one of their engineers and being like, and it was like, how do you know when someone's trying to compromise the credentials for this? And I was like, oh, I look at the footer. It always says copyright 2017. Because the power company hasn't changed that footer. If copyright date is more recent, that means it's not them. And I was like, that is the most wild explanation for how I knew it was right as opposed to wrong, was because they never updated their footer.
It's a good litmus test.
Yeah, that's a great detail. But it is the worst feeling when you go to someone who's an expert and you're not, and they make you feel stupid for not knowing, when you're coming to them because they are an expert and you're not, and you're just asking them for help, and they make you feel completely stupid. Well, how, make you feel like, well, you should know this. Well, I don't, because it's not my job to know it, and it's yours. And then it's like, then you don't want to come to them to ask questions. And so you create that adversarial relationship where then people don't want to come to you to ask questions. And then that's where that gap becomes bigger. And then, people aren't going to want to ask you, is this right or not? And then you've actually made your security situation worse when you do that.
Yeah. Especially as you're starting to think about scale, right? And so, relationships are hard. They take time. And so if you're coming and say, hey, could I do this? It's hard to as take time, right? And say, hey, I'm going to stop whatever project I was doing, making sure that you are emotionally secure, right? And you're coming doing kind of all these things. And that's great in kind of smaller teams, and you can kind of manage that. But then as teams start to grow, that might turn into 15 conversations a day where you yourself like, I can't. And so then you start to think about, how can you make the systems and processes that people interact with nicer, right? And so like, are there elements of gamification? Are there just like, oh my gosh, thank yous that you can have as an automatic response to Slack bots, and other pieces to making sure that all those feel goods can scale with you as well? Because if you do create the kind of that deterrent, it's not just a one-on-one, right? You might feel like, this person's not going to listen to me. I'm just going to throw my credit card and do my, into AWS and spin up a demo because I can. That type of action is also reflective of other team members, right? Because then that person's like, oh, don't go to IT, they suck. Like, well, let's go over here. that also starts to spread, right? Whether you realize it or not. And so it's crucial to have those crucial conversations, and also think about, give yourself some scale. Are there other pieces that you can just add some niceness, some positivity, and other things to making sure that it continues to be open, regardless of how the company kind of grows and transforms, or kind of add in some, resiliency into that conversation.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard. Look, we all have bad days or you've told the same person the same thing 100 times, and you're just like, why aren't you getting this? We all have those moments, right? But at the same
That's when we
time,
walk them out and just say, look, ask me one more time, I'll wipe your device.
Exactly. Like, just stop making my job harder. But at the same time, there have to be some give and takes, like.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't understand the significance of it. And so it might seem like a small ask, but it's like, you just saved the company, $250,000. Thank you. Right. And so you may or may not realize that, right? But kind of making sure that people feel empowered enough and understand the background of it. And so also taking the time to, come back to the why a little bit more. Say, hey, yes, thank you for saying that. Over kind of what? Yes, very soon. But making sure, whether it's in onboarding or kind of however many cycles you might have, opportunities to kind of work with folks, or even kind of, this is a great area to partner with senior leadership and say, hey, this is getting this message across. And again, making sure that everyone has the security mentality, right? Because I think most folks, kind of pull out since we're talking about a white paper, I'm just going to keep pulling out business jargon. But you hear a lot of organizations say, all right, we're now a software company. And that used to be kind of a stand-in for digital transformation and innovation, kind of do all those things. And that's great. And I think most people are getting there in 2022. But the next phase for a lot of folks is actually everyone needs to become a security company. Just thinking about kind of the decisions that are involved, kind of the interactions that you have, the types of vendors that you choose, right? Challenge other folks on kind of, what are the certifications? How do they treat and operate kind of security? Ask the hard questions for them too, because that ensures kind of everyone that you're interacting with in your ecosystem is kind of all on the same page. And so use that to your leverage as you're starting to think about those different pieces, but keep it as a, mentality almost.
Yeah. I love that. And I noticed a comment from Kelly earlier that I think ties all this up. It's just encouraging a mindset of, being skeptical at all times. And if everyone has that mindset, then, we're less susceptible to those vulnerabilities. So I put it in the chat a little bit earlier, but do we have any questions for Chase or the team? This was such a great discussion. Appreciate all the comments so far. But if you have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or you can ask it as a question. There's an option there at the bottom, but we'd love to answer any questions.
Yeah, Kelly's been dropping all kinds of knowledge bombs in the
chat
there. Lots of teachers in her family.
Love
That's
that,
great.
I had the pleasure of hiring Kelly in my previous role. And I was going to say, she's got an immense amount of knowledge and skills. So I'm glad she's here with us today.
Absolutely. And I haven't forgotten what you said last week, Kelly, about a Portland meetup. So,
yes, Kelly, don't you worry. She passed that along as soon as I got back from vacation. It was like her first Slack to me.
I was like, guess what?
Portland!
Yes. I would love that.
I need a good excuse to go back to Portland. I have not been in some time. So.
I've never been to Portland, but my brother lived there for a little bit and we were supposed to visit him, but then COVID hit.
Global panini.
That darn panini.
Yes. The panorama, I tell you.
I know.
Yep.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left. Chase, do you have any more knowledge bombs to drop?
Oh,
I
just
know
so
you keep
many,
going and going.
all the things. But no, I think I've gotten my point across, right? I think a lot of us know and understand the reality of it. And so now it's kind of again, how can we teach others? How can we kind of bring that back into the fold, making sure that they feel empowered, make sure that they feel confident, and making sure that too, that they're working with you as a partner and not, partner in crime, but in kind of exposing that, but really kind of making sure that we have the best foot forward. And then also too, to wrap it all together, lean on security to help boost your business. I think that's the one piece that we don't see a lot. And I certainly don't have enough of those conversations with partners and customers and owners and operators is, stop feeling like it's a tax, right? Like this is kind of an opportunity to making sure that you can show and shine and lean on that with your conversations with your own clients.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, we're going to, Kelly's saying that we're going to have an official JumpCloud person at the meetup. I think we're going to have to flip for it. Sorry. All three of us are going to have to flip for it. Yeah.
Rock, paper,
Coin
scissors,
toss.
I was gonna say maybe we can create a West Coast swing for this and do like Bay Area, Portland, and then Seattle. So I feel like required.
I think it's time for us to get a van. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I think
Yeah.
Yes.
Take the show on the road.
Road trip.
I am here for this.
Oh no, Kelly suggested a cage match.
I don't think I'm down
that
with a
escalated
cage match.
quickly.
I like my coworkers. I do not have to want to hit them with steel chairs or get
Pillows,
suplexed
maybe
off the
something
top rope.
soft.
So,
Soft
no.
and nice. Stuffed animals, throwing stuffed animals at each other. Please
Yeah,
give
it will be a
cloud paint
blue.
job.
It will be a JumpCloud teal van, Jacob. Don't worry about that.
Amazing.
It will be the teal color.
To the Cloudmobile.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to the Cloudmobile. I dig it. Road trip.
I love that. That could be the tagline. To the Cloudmobile.
I'm into it.
That could be our sign off. To the Cloudmobile, everyone.
I like it.
It's great.
All right. So we've got a couple of headlines, nothing huge, but we had some that I thought we would jump into really quickly. First off, Microsoft, of all things, found a TikTok vulnerability that allowed one-click account compromises. Microsoft said on Wednesday that they identified a vulnerability in TikTok's Android app that would allow attackers to hijack accounts when all the user had to do was click on a single link. And part of this is from the browser that TikTok has. And I've been reading some things recently about, TikTok being able to track everything you do in their browser. And then, of course, this deep link vulnerability came up as well. And apparently this was, TikTok was notified this in February. And yes, we do have the CVE for Rob if he wants it. 2022 28799. So researchers went on to create proof of concept exploit and did just exactly what it said it does. So that was confirmed. So if you use TikTok, make sure you're updated on that. Not that I think, Tom, we were talking about TikTok just yesterday and about kind of limiting permissions anyway and only using it on certain devices. So keep careful on that. And Rob says, what? TikTok is a host garbage. Shock Pikachu. Yeah, exactly. I'm really careful about what I put TikTok on. Kelly says, I feel like the only person without a TikTok account. You're the only person without a TikTok account because I keep hearing scary stories about how much it reports on you. Yeah, Kelly. I feel like an old person because I'm not on TikTok a whole lot, like, oh, get off my lawn, you whippersnappers. But I see so many funny TikTok things put on Facebook. Oh, look, there's another old person alert. I'm on Facebook and not TikTok. But I have it on my iPad, so it's not on my phone, so it doesn't have access to all of my things. But there are some pretty fun things on there, so it's really hard to resist not being on there, man. Who knows? Maybe I'll play on it and go viral.
Here's the whole thing I will mention to everybody. Apps only get permissions to look at the things you give them permissions to. So the sandbox model totally works. Apple will pay you $1 to $2 million if you can compromise the sandbox model. So, or you can prove someone else does. So that's kind of the whole, regime here. I'm trusting Apple's privacy and documentation. I'm trusting their privacy guides. I'm trusting their security folks because
that was your first mistake.
They're good at this. They're honestly good at this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, while it shows up on the front of the page of the App Store, doing things inside the TikTok app shouldn't be considered private in any way, shape, or form. And as far as I can tell, none of the messages that are sent that way are end-to-end encrypted. All of the content that's there, anything you do in the web browser can be communicated out. So knowledge is your best benefit. Don't use the browser on that app.
Yeah. Don't click on links.
And don't click on links from there. Watch the videos because some of them are outright hilarious.
Oh, follow Abby Jimenez. She's an author. She's the owner of Nadia's Cakes in Minnesota, and they went viral a few years ago for a cake, a geode cake that well, I can't mention anything about the geode cake, but it went viral for a reason. It was very funny. She's the one behind the account and had some very hilarious comments in response to people who had comments on the cake. She's very, very funny, and she has these adorable dogs that she posts on all the time. Her TikToks are hilarious, but she cross posts them, so that's how I know about them. So yeah, definitely there are some great things on there. So I'm not totally an old person yet. I mean, I'm getting there, but anyway. Next headline. Oh, by the way, some Chrome extensions with 1.4 million installs are covertly tracking visits and injecting code. So
Shocker.
Google has shock. Google has removed these browser extensions, but you should check and see if they are installed and remove them. So some third-party researchers reported that these were tracking users, and these 5 extensions were flagged by McAfee. So Netflix Party, Netflix Party 2, Flip Shop, full page screenshot capture, and auto buy flash sales. As of Wednesday, they've been removed from the Chrome Web Store, but double check. I'll post these in the community in my normal recap, and you can double check these. But please, please, please make sure you are not using these and double check.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Rob, I yell at the clouds all the time. But if you do too, I want to see videos. Post a video of that. I want to see you yelling at the clouds. I don't really yell at the clouds. I'm just joking. I point them out to my kids when they're really cool, but I don't yell at them yet. I think I may have another 15 or 20 years before I start yelling at the clouds. I think, yeah. All right, another one. I didn't do a lot of headlines today, but this is my favorite today. An AI won a state fair art contest. So there was a synthetic media artist named Jason Allen, and he entered an AI-generated artwork into the Colorado State Fair Fine Arts Competition, and he won first place in the digital arts, digitally manipulated photography category. It's not clear whether or not he actually disclosed that this was completely AI-generated and not just a digitally manipulated photograph. So people are a little bit up in arms about this, the whole, well, is it really, like photography and art? And what was interesting about the article was they said that just photography in general kind of started this same debate when it first came out about, is it art, because the artist didn't actually create it. It was, because
It was the
capturing something. Yeah. Is it really art when you take a picture of something? And so now this is starting a similar debate, which I just find funny that, as people find new ways to do things, it starts this whole debate about what is art and everything. So yeah, Alexa, are you shaking your fist at the sky or at the AI art? I'm not sure.
Yeah, at the clouds.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I can, coming from the Colorado State Fair, I actually used to judge the homebrew competition up there. And so I can say that the rules for that State Fair are a little bit loose. And so I doubt that any of that was kind of captured earlier on. But that's just, kind of the state of affairs.
Yeah. Well, the headline was really funny too, because it said AI wins State Fair art contest, annoys humans. I love Ars Technica. It just has some funny headlines sometimes. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate, right? Sometimes I've seen some of as people play around with the AI generators and stuff, there's been some really weird stuff coming out of it. But this one that this guy did, they had a picture of it, and it was actually kind of cool. So it's interesting what is coming out of that. As long as we don't start getting into all the deep fake stuff, which kind of scares me a little bit. But just creating art for art's sake is fun. But as long as it's not doing anything to kind of, do something you're not supposed to, I'm cool.
Yeah, that just happens in the metaverse. Don't worry about it. Totally.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah. What do you think, Alexa? You've been quiet.
Well, I am on TikTok, but actually my algorithm, it produces a lot of AI generated art with like, they create it from like books. They put in, those words, and it produces what the world in the novel might look like. And it's actually really cool. So I think it's cool.
I think there's, some fun things to do out there. Mike Lynn had a really good post last night on the Twitter machine about a new version of of like a DALL-E, engine that are out there that you can do some amazing things with. It's astonishing what we can let AI do if we want it to. The art is in the model, right? Like that is the art, is the model itself that has been created by the engineers. And so I would say that is where I come down on the whole art versus science thing. They're the same thing.
The link there. So that's fun to play with and kind of click on some of the different images and see how it renders.
Very cool. Well, with that, we are right at time. So perfect timing to end. Well, okay, a minute over. So we went over by a little bit, but close enough for me. Thank you all. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful 3-day weekend if you are here in the US. I hope you do something fun. Personally, I'm probably going to work on household chores that I need to do, get some things done. But hey, that's how I spend my. I'm officially old because that's how I spend my extra time is working on house projects.
Yeah,
now,
I got to do gardening this weekend. So the couple of encroaching vines have started to take down my persimmon tree, and I got to fix that. I only noticed that the other day when I was out in the back alley. So good times.
Well, whatever floats your boat, if I had one. But anyway, thanks all. Chase, thanks for joining us. Ella, I know you're already gone, but thank you for joining us as well. And we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Bye everybody.